supervolcanic eruption in Indonesia 70,000 years ago, all of the kinds of humans that you see on Earth appeared since then. They didn't all exist back then, 70,000 years ago. So this was outside environmental conditions that were changing humans. The humans weren't changing themselves. They changed in place in these different areas where they migrated to.
I know everything I read, and I used to read all this stuff all the time, follow all the scientific magazines on it and everything else. But here's the thing, and I know the truth behind it, which is my truth, but the accepted truth that you change to fit your environment, you change to fit these things. But I look at it this way. Supposedly now they're trying to brainwash some people to believe that we all came from the black race. That being so, why would certain features change, like your lips, your ears, and your nose, and your fingers, and things like that change, the size of certain body parts, and all that kind of change, when you're still unprotected from the weather and the conditions where you're living? I take any animal and creature. Animals grow super long hair if it gets colder. They do different things to naturally protect themselves. With this incredible, supposedly human race, then here's the biggest problem that I have, and I know it's a lie, but the lie that they made people believe is we all came from one race or one being. Now, if that was true, and I'll explain my truth on this if you want later, but we have four races here, really: black, yellow, red, and white. And those races are different. Now, to tell me because it's cold outside I'm going to change color, or because I'm eating rice I'm going to change into a different kind of a person, I mean, the aspects of why they have different races, because they're different races. And like you said, in ancient times, the races didn't mix. They killed each other. Even in the caveman time, they didn't become part. Sure, in the United States, which most people don't know why many black people are part Native, it's been called rape and abuse. How the black people survived. They went to the red race to survive and live with them. The same as when they started killing all the Native people, they went back became slaves. So it was a matter of life that way, but that's how the DNA started switching between black and red people. So, I mean, in the United States, there was 50 million Native Americans in the United States 400 years ago. And in that, there were different tribes. There were 600 tribes. And between that, most of them came from other countries. I mean, if we want to go before the earth split up and it was one continent and everything else, but there were different tribes. Now, most of the tribes look similar, while the Tibetan people look very equal to the native people, because the tribes did come from there. So, and they crossed, when the land was there, they could just walk to it. They didn't have to take boats and stuff. So when the continents actually started splitting up and the races started changing again, then we go back to how come we have different colored races in different parts of the world, and it's not due to the weather, it's not due to what they eat. I mean, we eat crazy food now. I mean, people that live on drugs, should they look like an alien? I mean, shouldn't they change if it was based on what they eat? I mean, our system, our immune system is incredible. It can destroy anything if we didn't destroy the immune system itself. So I think the human creation was perfect. So getting back to evolution, when it was being created, every aspect of the human body was thought out. It wasn't like nature said, well, let's try this, let's try that. It wouldn't have been a fast time. So getting back to when you say that altering entity, whatever it is, you're not saying what it is. Call it God, call it nature, call it oneness or consciousness. I mean, what decides that? And how does that really work with an entity? And the problem with all this, to me, is after 20 billion years, the human race has not moved forward. The only thing that changed, and this is boggling to me, I don't know how people perceive it and accept it, in all that time, the only thing that changed is the toys the man plays with. I mean, women is still under their belt. They still keep them down. And the only thing they do care about is sex, drugs, partying, and all those things. It hasn't changed. It's not like it changed into becoming any kind of better creation. even working out a relationship, all those things have never changed. I mean, sure, we give...
Well, I have to interject at this particular point and say that there a lot of things are changing right now in our understanding of what happened in the past. If you only go back to the last ice age, for example, yes, what you're saying is pretty much true. But now we're finding that go back 50 to 100,000 years ago, and there are different kinds of hominids on Earth living back then. Now we have not just the Neanderthals, but we also have the Denisovans. And new work on finds in Australia, for example, are showing that the oldest humans currently known come from Australia, and that they migrated up through the Indonesian islands to Eastern Asia, and then across Asia and down into Africa, and then later came back out of Africa. One of the things that Dr. Bruce Fenton is showing in his book, the Into Africa Theory of Human Evolution, he lives down in Australia and is working on all of these new discoveries down there, saying that the Aboriginal humans in Australia are the oldest humans on Earth. So we're now finding additional evidence that there are other kinds of humanoids living on Earth 400,000 years ago. They just found a skeleton at the bottom of a cave in Spain of a Denisovan that is 400,000 years old.
No, I'm not saying that.
Dust.
I agree totally with that. I mean, they don't talk about the giants inside the United States. They don't talk about a lot of the things that existed. I mean, there was more. I'm just saying the exact human race that we are right now. I mean, I don't believe we split from the monkey.
Yeah. Right, we're the survivors, okay? And there are others who believe that the monkeys evolved from our ancestors. So,
right.
There's a lot of uncertainty right now in terms of which came first. I mean, if you take the chimpanzee, there's only about a 4% genetic difference between chimpanzees and us. And,
wait. On that alone, you can say their fingers, the way they go to the bathroom, the way they have sex, the way they do things are similar to the human race, except one thing.
Right.
Their brain's small. A human's brain is like 6 times bigger. So I'm talking like going back to the caveman time, what size was their brain? And then why they show you these ancient skulls with the big brains, supposedly. Right.
Well, of course, the Neanderthal had a slightly larger brain, and then these long skulls, these giants, had huge brains that were 30% bigger than our brain. And does that equate to more intelligence? I don't know. But the one thing that we do know from the history of the Native Americans is that these red-headed giants were cannibals. They had no human morality like we do. I mean, they had no problem hunting down us and killing us and eating us. Right?
No, I know that. Right, that's for sure. No, I know that. I was with the oldest Hopi elder in the United States before he died. The oldest. He was the oldest Hopi elder, Thomas Binyaka. He carried the Hopi prophecy. So he was one of the smartest people in the Native Nation for the Hopi tribe. And I was with him rather shortly after he died. But in that, when I was with him, he explained about his history. So the human race will never accept it. They're not going to be prepared for what's going to happen. And this was all a month before he died. He says, they lived underground. They were the only beings in the United States. They were never brought here. The only tribe out of 600 tribes that actually lived in the United States from the creation of the United States. They lived underground. They were given this message to come out to meet races outside their cave. They had a different god. They had a lot of different things going on, but they did come out. And from that point on, the United States, when it was being taken over by Spanish and British and the English, they wanted to destroy their truth completely, even though the Hopis, and they tried to wipe out the Hopi race every which way they could. They tried to get them to fight with the Apaches. They tried to get everybody to fight with them, Navajo people. it never went down because the Hopi people are the most peaceful people. I mean, there's one other tribe, but nobody even ever heard of them. But the Hopi people only, and this is, I know this because I work with them, the Hopi people are the only race on this planet that have a different DNA than every other race on this planet. So they weren't a mixture. They didn't come from the black race. They didn't come from the yellow race, the green race, the purple race, whatever race.
They said they were put on Earth from outside the Earth. They are extraterrestrials that were seeded here on Earth.
Well, so was every other person. I don't believe that anybody was born here.
Well, that we can get into an interesting discussion on that, and it really depends on what evidence you stress and what you don't. But the fascinating part of based on an evolutionary biologist is how can we get so much similarity between a humanoid that has evolved in another world, separate from our world, and that then is brought to our world and has such similar genetics as other primates that live on this planet. So there's a paradox here, okay? And the overriding implication is that there is something that is causing humans to evolve similarly in different parts of the universe. It's the same sort of thing with if a mammal or a bird wants to go back to the sea, wants to live in the sea, it has to develop a form that resembles that of a fish. It has to develop a tail and fins like that of a fish, and we see this happening time and time again between the whales and the penguins. And so that the environment requires that the animal conform to its physics and not to the physics that existed on land. And so then the question becomes, if any animal wants to become humanoid, evolve into a form that is similar to us, will it end up with a similar genetic profile?
Well, and I could see, now here's the thing. Obviously, there's no proof of a lot of the things we're going to talk about, what we are talking about. I mean, there's synthetic truth and program truth, written documents that say certain truth. But I will ask you this. I don't know personally well, or are you aware of your past lives, first off, all right, and how far back do you go? Because luckily for me, I became aware of probably all my past lives. And from the time I was alien, the time I came to the planet Earth for the first time, and I looked at the races, I looked at what happened. And basically what I know for a fact, and I can debate Mr. Zachariah Sitchin all the way down to everybody that believes Anunnaki, who brought us here and how we became what we became. Like kind of what you just said, we were human aspects of different races that were similar. We kind of had the emotions and things that all kind of reacted the same way. Now, the races that are here, the only one that I would say is the closest to us is the Pleiadians. And they are us because they're us from the future. Billy Myers went into great detail about that, didn't understand a lot about it as well. I mean, he screwed himself up by doing a lot of dumb things to make him look like he can make a robot alien ship and different things, and all these other little things he did, taking a girl from Mickey Mouse Club and saying that's one of the aliens, and all these things that really hurt him. But he was working with a race. I made friends with Fred Bell. I think Fred Bell was the most intelligent person I ever met. First off, he did work with Billy Myers greatly. He was on their ships. He never bragged about it. He never just constantly wrote about it or talked about it. He kept a lot of that secret. I mean, he was a doctor. He created all these vitamins and things. He created these nuclear reactors. He sold them all through Japan, and he did a lot of work. I mean, he was trying to get Billy Myers to move to the United States. Then Billy Myers did something that nobody else has ever did either. He wrote a list of 100 prophecies in 1950, and he gave them to the whole world. He sent them to every government on the planet. And he was told by the free agent